Welcome to the Inspiring Illustrations channel. The story of Micah. Who was Micah in the Bible? Micah was a prophet from the Old Testament who lived in the region of Judah around the 8th and 7th centuries before Christ. He is known for his role as a spokesperson for God, delivering messages of judgment and hope to the people of Israel and Judah. The book of Micah is part of the minor prophets in the Bible and is composed of 7 chapters that contain warnings against sin, prophecies of destruction and restoration, as well as promises about the messianic future. Micah lived during a time of great political and social instability. During the reigns of Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, the kingdom of Judah faced internal crises and external threats. Samaria, the capital of the northern kingdom of Israel, was destroyed by the Assyrians in 722 before Christ, and Judah was at risk of facing the same fate. Corruption, social injustice, and idolatry were rampant among the people, especially among the leaders and rulers, which provoked the wrath of God. The prophet begins his prophecies by denouncing the corruption of the leaders and the oppression of the poor. He criticizes both the authorities and the priests and prophets who twisted justice in exchange for bribes. Micah warns that because of these sins, God would bring severe punishment upon the people. Both Samaria and Jerusalem would be destroyed. The invasion of Assyria and the fall of Samaria were seen as the fulfillment of these warnings. Additionally, Micah denounces the exploitation of the poor by the rich, who seized lands and properties, causing suffering and injustice. The society was morally degraded, with divided families and broken alliances. The prophet makes it clear that God's punishment would not be arbitrary but a direct result of the people's disobedience and injustice. Despite the harsh words of judgment, Micah also brings a message of hope and restoration. He prophesies that after the period of suffering and exile, God would bring back the remnants of Israel. Mount Zion would be restored and would become the center of worship to God, where all nations would seek his guidance. One of the most well-known aspects of his prophecy is the announcement of a new king who would come from Bethlehem, a clear reference to the Messiah. Micah describes this future king as a shepherd who would rule with justice and bring lasting peace. This prophecy is widely interpreted by Christians as a foretelling of the birth of Jesus Christ. In this video, we will dive into the fascinating story of Micah, exploring everything the Bible reveals about this extraordinary prophet of God. We will examine his journey from beginning to end, uncovering the challenges he faced and the lessons we can draw from his life. But before we proceed, I would like to extend a special invitation to new viewers. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel and activate notifications so you do not miss any of our Bible studies. The name Micah originates from Hebrew and means "who is like God." This name emphasizes the incomparability of God, demonstrating his supremacy and that he is beyond reach. The key verse of the book of Micah is found in Micah, chapter 6, verse 8, which says, "He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God?" This verse summarizes the central message of the prophet Micah, emphasizing the importance of living a life of justice, mercy, and humility before God. It calls us to reflect on our actions and to seek a life that is in harmony with God's divine principles of justice and compassion. Now, let's delve deeply into the story of Micah, starting with the first chapter. Micah, chapter 1. This is the message that God revealed to Micah of Moresheth. He had these visions concerning Samaria and Jerusalem during the reigns of Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah in Judah. The sentence of Samaria. "Hear, you peoples, all of you, listen, earth and all who live in it. The Lord will be a witness against you, the Lord from his holy temple. He will come down from his dwelling place and tread on the high places of the earth. The mountains will melt beneath him like wax before the fire, and the valleys will split apart like water rushing down a slope. All this is because of Jacob's transgression, because of the sins of the people of Israel." What is Jacob's transgression? Is it not Samaria? What is Judah's high place? Is it not Jerusalem? Therefore, I will make Samaria a heap of rubble, a place for planting vineyards. I will pour her stones into the valley and lay bare her foundations. All her idols will be broken to pieces. All her temple gifts will be burned with fire. I will destroy all her images, since she gathered her gifts from the wages of prostitutes. As the wages of prostitutes they will again be used. The nearness of Jerusalem's enemies. Because of this, I will weep and wail. I will go about barefoot and naked. I will howl like a jackal and moan like an owl. For Samaria's plague is incurable. It has spread to Judah. It has reached the very gate of my people, even to Jerusalem itself. Tell it not in Gath. Weep not at all.
In Beth Ophrah, roll in the dust.
Pass by naked and in shame, you who live in Shapher. Those who live in Zanan will not come out. Beth Ezel is in mourning, it no longer protects you. Those who live in Maroth writhe in pain, waiting for relief, because disaster has come from the Lord, even to the gate of Jerusalem. You who live in Lachish, harness fast horses to the chariot. You are where the sin of daughter Zion began, for the transgressions of Israel were found in you. Therefore, you will give parting gifts to Morsheth Gath. The town of Akzib will prove deceptive to the kings of Israel. The Lord declares, I will bring a conqueror against you who live in Mareshah. The nobles of Israel will flee to Adullam. Shave your head in mourning for the children in whom you delight. Make yourself as bald as the vulture, for they will go from you into exile. Micah, chapter 2. The punishment of those who exploit the poor. Woe to those who plan iniquity, to those who plot evil on their beds. At morning's light they carry it out because it is in their power to do it. They covet fields and seize them, and houses and take them. They defraud people of their homes, they rob them of their inheritance. Therefore the Lord says, I am planning disaster against this people, from which you cannot save yourselves. You will no longer walk proudly, for it will be a time of calamity. In that day, people will ridicule you, they will taunt you with this mournful song, we are utterly ruined, my people's possession is divided up. He takes it from me. He assigns our fields to traitors. Therefore, you will have no one in the assembly of the Lord to divide the land by lot. Do not prophesy, their prophets say. Do not prophesy about these things. Disgrace will not overtake us. Should this be said, you descendants of Jacob? Does the Lord become impatient? Does he do such things? Do not my words do good to the one whose ways are upright? Lately, my people have risen up like an enemy. You strip off the rich robe from those who pass by without a care, like men returning from battle. You drive the women of my people from their pleasant homes. You take away my blessing from their children forever. Get up, go away. For this is not your resting place, because it is defiled, it is ruined, beyond all remedy. If a liar and deceiver comes and says, I will prophesy for you plenty of wine and beer, that would be just the prophet for this people. But the Lord promises, I will surely gather all of you, Jacob. I will surely bring together the remnant of Israel. I will bring them together like sheep in a pen, like a flock in its pasture. The place will throng with people. The one who breaks open the way will go up before them. They will break through the gate and go out. Their king will pass through before them, the Lord at their head. Micah, chapter 3. Warning to leaders and prophets. Listen, rulers and authorities of Israel. You should practice justice, but instead, you despise good and embrace evil. You mistreat my people, stripping them of their dignity and exploiting them without mercy. You consume my people as if you were devourers, destroying their lives and treating them like meat to be cooked, crushing their bones and shattering them. The time will come when you will cry out to the Lord, but he will not answer you. Because of your wicked deeds, God will not hear your pleas. The prophets deceive the people. To those who offer them money, they promise peace, but they threaten those who give them nothing with disaster and war. The Lord declares to these false prophets that instead of visions, they will find darkness, and the revelations will disappear. The light will extinguish, and they will be enveloped in darkness. The seers and those who predict the future will be shamed, for they will have no answers from God and will fall into disgrace. But as for me, the Spirit of the Lord gives me power, a love for justice, and the courage to expose the sins and iniquities of the people of Israel. Listen, rulers and leaders. You reject what is good and pervert justice. You are building Jerusalem on a foundation of injustice and bloodshed. The authorities take bribes to corrupt justice. The priests charge for teaching the law, and the prophets demand money to predict the future. Even so, they claim that God is with them, saying that no harm will come to them because the Lord protects them. However, because of your actions, Jerusalem will be reduced to rubble, Mount Zion will be plowed like a field, and the site of the temple will become a forest-covered terrain. Micah, chapter 4. The peaceful reign of the Lord. In the days to come, the mountain of the Lord's temple will be exalted above all other mountains, and nations will hasten to reach it. The peoples will say, Let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the temple of the God of Israel. He will show us what we must do, and we will follow his paths. For from Jerusalem, the Lord's teachings will come, and from Mount Zion, he will speak to his people. He will judge between many peoples and settle disputes among great distant nations. Swords will be turned into plowshares, and spears into tools for harvest. Nations will no longer prepare for war, nor will they lift weapons against one another. Everyone will live in peace, resting under their fig trees and grapevines without fear. This is the promise of the Lord Almighty. While other nations follow and worship their own gods, we, however, will serve and obey the Lord our God forever. God's promised salvation for his people. The Lord declares, "The day will come when I will gather those who suffer, all who have been punished and scattered from their land. I will bring them back, even though they are in distant lands, and I will make them a strong nation. I, the Lord, will reign over them on Mount Zion, and they will be my people once again forever. Jerusalem will return to being the center, the capital of Israel, the place from which I, like a shepherd, watch and care for my people. Why do you cry, Jerusalem, like a woman in labor? Is it because you are without a king, and your leaders are gone? Bend over in pain and cry out like a woman giving birth, for your inhabitants will be taken to live in the fields and later exiled to Babylon. However, the Lord will save and free you from the enemy's control. Many nations have gathered to attack Jerusalem, saying, 'We must destroy it and desecrate it.' But they do not understand the Lord's plans. They do not realize that they have been gathered to be punished, like wheat being separated from chaff. The Lord commands, 'People of Jerusalem, rise and face your enemies. I will give you strength like a bull with iron horns and bronze hooves. You will destroy many nations, and the wealth they have accumulated will be offered to me, the Lord of all the earth.'" Micah, chapter 5. People of Jerusalem, prepare to face the enemies, for they surround the city and seek to take the life of the King of Israel. God promises a new leader for his people. He says, "Bethlehem Ephrathah, though you are one of the smallest towns in Judah, from you will come the one who will rule Israel." He comes from an ancient lineage, from a distant past. The Lord will deliver the Israelites into the hands of their enemies until the birth of the child who is to be born. After that, the exiled Israelites will reunite with their relatives in the Promised Land. This leader will be like a shepherd who will guide the people with God's strength and in the name of the Lord, their glorious God. His people will live in safety, for his power will extend to the ends of the earth. He will bring peace, and when the Assyrians invade the land and conquer its fortresses, the chief leaders of Israel will be sent to fight them. These leaders will invade the land of Nimrod, Assyria, and conquer it. Thus, when the Assyrians attack, the king will save them. The surviving Israelites will be like the dew the Lord sends upon the earth, like the rain that waters the plants. They will rely on God's help, not on humans. These survivors of Israel will be like a lion among the peoples, devastating like a young lion in the midst of a flock of sheep, attacking without anyone able to stop them. The people of Israel will defeat their enemies and destroy all those who rise against them. The Lord declares, "On that day, I will destroy your horses and chariots of war. Your cities will be torn down, and your fortresses demolished. I will put an end to your practices of witchcraft and leave you without soothsayers. I will tear down your idols and pillars of Baal, and you will never again worship works made by your hands. I will destroy all the Asherah poles and demolish your cities." In his wrath and fury, the Lord promises to take vengeance on all nations that disobey him. Micah, chapter 6. Listen to what the Lord is saying. "Rise and present your case before the mountains, and let the hills hear your voice. Listen, mountains, to the Lord's accusation. Listen, eternal foundations of the earth. For the Lord has a case against his people and is ready to debate with Israel. My people, what have I done to you? How have I burdened you? Answer me. I brought you out of Egypt, freed you from slavery, and sent Moses, Aaron, and Miriam to guide you. My people, remember how Balak, king of Moab, tried to harm you and how Balaam, son of Beor, responded. Remember the journey from Shittim to Gilgal, so that you may understand the righteous acts of the Lord. With what should I come before the Lord? With what should I bow before the supreme God? Should I bring burnt offerings, calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams or 10,000 rivers of oil? Should I offer my firstborn for my transgressions, the fruit of my body for the sins I have committed? He has already shown you, O human, what is good and what the Lord requires of you, to act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. The voice of the Lord cries out to the city, and wise is the one who fears his name. Listen to the warning and the one who sent it. There are still dishonest gains in the house of the wicked, and fraudulent measures that God detests. How can I overlook false scales and dishonest weights that fill the rich with violence, while its inhabitants speak lies and their tongues only utter deceit? Therefore, I will strike you severely, ruining you because of your many sins. You will eat but not be satisfied. you will remain hungry. You will store up, but you will lose everything, and the little that remains will be taken by the sword. You will plant but not harvest. You will tread grapes but not drink the wine. You will produce oil but not anoint yourselves with it. You have followed the decrees of Omri and all the practices of the house of Ahab, walking in their ways. Therefore I will make you a desolation, and your inhabitants a mockery. You will bear the shame of my people. Micah, chapter 7. Woe to me! I feel like someone gathering summer fruits but finding no cluster of grapes or ripe figs to eat. Nothing I longed for is available. The faithful have vanished from the earth. There are no more honest people. Everyone lies in wait to shed blood, each one setting traps for the other. Their hands are always ready to do evil. The authorities demand bribes, judges accept payoffs, and the powerful do as they please, conspiring together. The best among them is like a thorn bush, and the most upright is worse than a hedge of thorns. But the day when God visits them and brings judgment is coming. Now will be their time of confusion. Do not trust in neighbors or put faith in friends. Even with the one who lies beside you, be careful what you say. For a son dishonors his father, a daughter rises against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A person's enemies are in their own household. But as for me, I will look to the Lord and wait for the God who saves me. My God will hear me. Do not gloat over my distress, my enemy. Though I have fallen, I will rise. Though I sit in darkness, the Lord will be my light. I will endure the Lord's wrath because I have sinned against him, until he pleads my case and upholds my cause. He will bring me into the light, and I will see his righteousness. Then my enemy will see it and will be covered with shame, the one who said to me, "Where is the Lord your God?" My eyes will see her downfall. Now she will be trampled like mud in the streets. The day for rebuilding your walls will come, the day for extending your boundaries. In that day, people will come to you from Assyria and from Egypt, from the Euphrates River to the sea, and from mountain to mountain. But the earth will be desolate because of its inhabitants, due to the fruit of their deeds. Shepherd your people with your staff, the flock of your inheritance, which lives by itself in a forest, surrounded by fertile fields. Let them feed in Bashan and Gilead as in days long ago. As in the days when you brought us out of Egypt, show us your wonders. The nations will see and be ashamed of all their power. They will put their hands over their mouths, and their ears will become deaf. They will lick dust like snakes, like creatures that crawl on the ground. They will come trembling out of their strongholds and turn in fear to the Lord our God, afraid before him. Who is a God like you, who pardons sin and forgives the transgression of the remnant of his inheritance? You do not stay angry forever, but delight to show mercy. You will again have compassion on us. You will tread our sins underfoot and hurl all our iniquities into the depths of the sea. You will be faithful to Jacob and show love to Abraham, as you pledged on oath to our ancestors in days long ago. Conclusion. The book of Micah is a powerful blend of warning and hope. It alerts God's people to the consequences of sin and injustice while also promising restoration and the coming of a messianic king who would bring peace. The central message of the prophet is that God is just, yet merciful, and desires a genuine relationship with his people, grounded in justice and moral righteousness. Micah is remembered as a prophet who confronted the powerful and defended the oppressed, showing that God's heart is always on the side of justice and compassion. Now, let's reflect on some valuable lessons we can apply in our lives from the story of the prophet Micah. 1. The voice of the marginalized matters. Micah, coming from a small rural town, teaches us that God hears and values the voices of those whom society often overlooks. His story encourages us to pay attention to and amplify the voices of the marginalized in our own communities. 2. Balance between judgment and hope. Micah proclaimed both judgment and hope of restoration. This reminds us that while we must acknowledge the consequences of sin, we should also hold on to hope in God's mercy and restorative power. 3. The importance of social justice. The prophet strongly emphasized social justice as an integral part of spiritual life. His message challenges us to see the pursuit of justice not as an option, but as an essential part of our faith. 4. Authentic worship versus empty ritualism. Micah criticized superficial religiosity, teaching us that God desires more than outward rituals. He calls us to genuine worship, manifested in acts of justice, love, and humility. 5. The universality of God's peace. Micah's vision of nations turning their weapons into farming tools reminds us that God's plan for peace is universal and transformative. This encourages us to work for peace in every aspect of our lives. 6. Courage to confront power. Micah did not hesitate to confront corrupt leaders, teaching us the importance of speaking truth to power, even when it is difficult or dangerous. 7. The nature of true repentance. The prophet taught that true repentance involves more than words. It requires a change of heart and behavior. This challenges us to seek deep transformation in our lives. 8. God's compassion for the vulnerable. Micah emphasized God's special care for the poor and oppressed. This reminds us of our responsibility to care for the most vulnerable in our society. 9. The importance of personal integrity. The prophet denounced corruption and dishonesty, reminding us of the importance of integrity in every aspect of our lives. 10. The Messianic promise. Micah's prophecy of the Messiah's birth in Bethlehem reminds us of God's long-term redemption plan and encourages us to trust in his promises, even when we do not see their immediate fulfillment. 11. The call to humility. Micah 6 verse 8 famously calls us to walk humbly with God. This reminds us that true spiritual greatness is found in humility and submission to God. 12. God's faithfulness. Micah emphasized God's unshakable faithfulness, even in the face of the people's unfaithfulness. This encourages us to trust in God's constant love and mercy, regardless of our circumstances. These lessons from Micah's life and ministry remain deeply relevant for us today. They challenge us to live a faith that integrates sincere worship, social justice, personal integrity, and trust in God's promises. Micah's message calls us to a life of active faith, seeking to transform not just our hearts but also the world around us. Which of these lessons impacted you the most? Leave your comment and let's discuss how we can apply these truths in our daily lives.